the light beneath the floor. In my village, the night doesn't fall. It rises. It seeps up from the damp earth and the dark water of the rice paddies, swallowing the last of the day's brutal heat and replacing it with a thick, clinging humidity. The air on a moonless night like this becomes so heavy it feels like breathing water. It fills your lungs, coats your skin, and carries the sounds of the dark world with a strange, wet clarity. Tonight, that world was singing its usual song. The endless, electric drone of cicadas was the bass line, a sound so constant you only noticed it when it stopped. Beneath it, you could hear the chorus of frogs from the paddies, the distant bark of a village dog, the soft rustle of palm fronds in a breeze that offered no relief. These were the sounds of my life, the lullaby of my home on the outskirts of Kampong Chnang. I lay on my thin sleeping mat, the woven bamboo cool against my back, but doing little to fight the oppressive warmth. My grandmother, my yai, was already asleep across the small room, her breathing a soft, rhythmic whisper. The single room of our stilt house was dark, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the cracks in the woven walls. It smelled of familiar things. The smoky sweetness of incense from the offering she'd made earlier to the free fum, our little spirit house, and the earthy scent of the clay pots that gave our province its name. I was drifting on the edge of sleep, lost in that comfortable, humming darkness. Then came the new smell. It wasn't a village smell. It wasn't wood smoke or prahak or jasmine blossoms. It slipped through the floorboards first, a phantom scent that made the hairs on my arms stand up before my mind could even process it. It was coppery and metallic, like an old knife left out in the rain. But under that was something else, something thick and sweet and deeply wrong. The smell of meat left too long in the sun. The smell of rot. Old blood and decay. My eyes snapped open. The cicadas continued their drone, oblivious. I lay perfectly still, straining my ears, trying to place the source of the smell. It was coming from below the house, from the dark, muddy space between the dirt and our floor. We kept our chickens penned up there at night, but this was not the smell of chickens. Then came the sound. It was a wet, rhythmic dragging, a heavy, dragging sound that made my stomach clench. It was slow, laborious. The sound of something heavy and saturated being pulled across the mud, like a full sack of rice soaked in water or a pile of sodden laundry. Drag, pause, drag, pause. It moved with a sickening purpose. My heart began to beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A thief. No thief would make such a sound. A water buffalo that had gotten loose. No, the sound was too low to the ground, too fleshy. I had to see. The fear was a cold knot in my throat, but the not knowing was worse. I crawled silently from my mat, my hands and knees moving with painstaking slowness across the split bamboo floor. The bamboo creaked softly, and I froze, glancing at Yai. Her breathing was unchanged. She was still asleep. I reached the wall, near the spot where a piece of the bamboo flooring had split, leaving a long, thin crack. It was just wide enough to see through. My heart hammered against my chest as I lowered my head, pressing my eye to the opening. At first, there was only blackness, the thick, absolute dark under the house. The smell was stronger here, a nauseating wave of filth and iron that made me want to gag. The dragging sound had stopped directly below me. I held my breath, listening. Silence. The only sound was the frantic drumming in my own ears. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it was just an animal, a stray dog dragging some carcass it had found. I was about to pull away, to chalk it up to an overactive imagination in the oppressive night. And then, a light bloomed in the darkness. It wasn't a flashlight. It wasn't a candle. It was a faint, pulsing crimson glow. A sick, unhealthy red, like the light shining through a drop of blood. It bobbed erratically, hovering a few inches above the mud, illuminating nothing but itself. It was a contained light, casting no beam, just a sphere of soft, visceral red. I stared, mesmerized and horrified. What was I seeing? It was no animal I had ever known. It pulsed with a slow, steady beat like a dying heart. A wave of cold dread, colder than any night air, washed over me. This was wrong. This was unnatural. The light began to move. It drifted slowly, deliberately out from under my house. It crossed the small, muddy patch of ground and moved toward the dirt path that ran between the houses. I watched its crimson glow glide through the darkness, silent now except for a faint, wet squelch I could just barely hear. It was heading for the next house over, the house belonging to Bong Chan and his wife, Chantria, my friend. Chantria, who had just given birth to her first child, a little boy, less than a week ago. My blood ran cold. The light floated directly towards their stilts, towards the spot on the floor where I knew she would be sleeping, nursing her newborn son. It was then I noticed it. The sound of the night had changed. The incessant drone of the cicadas, the background music of my entire life, had stopped. Not faded, not lessened. Stopped, abruptly, as if a switch had been flipped. The world had fallen into a dead, waiting silence. And in that silence, the small, pulsing red light slipped under Chantria's house and vanished from my sight. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I couldn't. I crawled back to my mat and lay there, rigid, staring into the darkness of my own home. Every creak of the bamboo, every sigh of the wind was amplified in the terrifying new silence. I was listening for something, I didn't know what. A cry, a scream, but nothing came. The silence remained absolute, heavy and suffocating, until the first hint of gray dawn began to bleed through the cracks in the wall. Only then, as the world began to regain its color, did the cicadas tentatively start their humming again. But it sounded different now. It sounded fragile. The morning brought with it a thick, soupy fog that clung to the village, muffling sound and sight. It felt appropriate. The world felt wrong, out of focus. Yai was already awake, stoking the small charcoal brazier to boil water for tea. She looked at me, her deeply wrinkled face full of concern. "Soria, you look like you've seen a ghost," she said, her voice raspy with sleep. "You are pale as a gecko's belly." I didn't know what to say. How could I explain what I saw? A floating red light, a dragging sound. She would think I had a fever dream. I didn't sleep well, Yai," I mumbled, helping her with the tea. The words felt hollow. The image of that crimson light was burned behind my eyes. I kept thinking of Chantria and her baby. I had to see them. I made an excuse about bringing them some bobber, the rice porridge Yai had made, and hurried out of the house as soon as I could. The air outside was still thick with the smell of damp earth, but the coppery, rotten scent from the night was gone, or at least, I couldn't detect it anymore. I walked the short distance to Chantria's house, my heart a nervous drum. I called out before climbing the wooden steps. "Aun Chantria, it's me, Soria." The door opened a crack. It was Bong Chan, her husband. His face was a mask of exhaustion and worry. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "Soria, come in," he whispered, ushering me inside. The single room was dim, the shutters closed against the morning light. Chantria was lying on her mat, and the air inside was close and had a faint, sour smell, like spoiled milk. She was pale, with dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises, but it was the baby that made my breath catch in my throat. He was so small, cradled in her arms, and his skin had a grayish, translucent quality. He was fussing weakly, a thin, reedy cry that held no strength. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We don't know," Chan said, running a hand through his already messy hair. "He nursed before we slept, but when we woke up he was like this. Cold, he won't feed properly, he just cries and cries." Chantria looked up at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, pleading fear that I recognized from my own heart last night. "The midwife came," she said, her voice weak. "Yasana, she said it's just a newborn fever, that it will pass. But Soria, he feels so empty." Empty, that was the perfect word. He looked drained, hollowed out. I knelt down beside them, looking at the small child, and a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air snaked down my spine. On the floor, near the edge of the mat where the baby lay, was a small, dark stain on the bamboo. It was no bigger than my palm, a brownish-red smudge that looked like something had dripped and been hastily wiped away. And from that spot, I could smell it. Faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The sickly, sweet, coppery scent of rot. I felt like I was going to be sick. I made my excuses, left the porridge, and stumbled back to my own house, my mind racing. A fever. No, this was something else. This was because of the light, the dragging thing. It had come here to this house. It had done something to that baby. When I got home, Yai was sitting on the floor, mending a fishing net. She didn't look up as I entered, but she spoke. "The child of Chantria is sick." It wasn't a question. In a village this small, news travels faster than the wind. "Yes, Yai," I said, my voice shaking. "Very sick." I hesitated, then I decided I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I had to tell her. I sat down across from her, and in a low, trembling voice, I told her everything. The smell, the wet, dragging sound, the silence of the cicadas, and the pulsing, crimson light that moved from under our house to Chantria. As I spoke, the rhythmic movement of her hands slowed, and then stopped. She put the net down and looked at me. Her face, usually so full of warmth, was now a stony mask of deep ancestral fear. The kind of fear that is passed down in stories whispered by firelight, a fear as old as the land itself. She was silent for a long time, her dark eyes searching my face, judging my honesty, my sanity. Finally, she nodded slowly, a grim, final acceptance. "Up," she whispered, the word a puff of air, a forbidden name. "What?" I asked, though I had heard the name before. In children's ghost stories, in warnings from elders not to wander at night. "Some call it Krasu," she continued, her voice low and grave. "A woman who meddled with dark magic, with sorcery she did not understand. She made a pact for beauty or power or a man's love, but the magic was corrupt. It cursed her. By day, she looks like any other woman. She walks among us, talks with us, eats with us. But at night, the curse takes hold." She leaned closer, her eyes wide. Her head detaches from her body. It floats through the darkness with her heart and her stomach and her entrails hanging beneath it. It glows with an unholy light. It seeks out filth, carrion, blood. But its favorite food, its greatest craving, is the blood of pregnant women and the life from newborn bobbies. I felt the blood drain from my face, the dragging sound, the wetness. It was the sound of her intestines, her organs trailing through the mud, the pulsing red light, her glowing heart. "The smell you smelled," Yai said, her voice barely audible. "That is the stench of her curse. And the silence, the creatures of the night know her. They fear her. When she hunts, the world holds its breath." It all clicked into place, a horrifying, impossible puzzle. The thing from my nightmares was real, and it lived here in my village. "Who, Yai?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Who is it?" She shook her head, her eyes filled with a sad, weary wisdom. "That is the most terrible part of the curse, Soria. It could be anyone. A neighbor you have known your whole life. A friend you trust. She hides her true nature during the day. She is a smiling face with a rotten soul." A chilling thought took root in my mind. Yasana, the midwife, the one who had come to see the baby, the one who had dismissed his condition as a simple fever, the one who would have been close to him, who could have touched him. "Yai," I began, "is there a way to know, to identify one?" My grandmother picked up her net again, her hands moving automatically, but her eyes were distant, lost in dark memories. "There are stories," she said softly. "They say that because she eats filth and blood at night, she must constantly wipe her mouth during the day to clean away the phantom taste. She will often do it when she thinks no one is looking, a subtle gesture with a cloth or the back of her hand." She looked at me then, her gaze sharp and serious. "But you must be careful, child. To see such a thing is dangerous. To know her secret is to make yourself her enemy, and the op does not forgive." That night, sleep was an impossibility. I lay on my mat, my ears straining against the familiar drone of the cicadas, praying that it wouldn't stop. Every gust of wind, every rustle of leaves was the beginning of that terrible dragging sound. I imagined the floating head, the crimson glow, and my body would lock up in a paralysis of fear. The light did not appear under my house that night, but my terror was no less potent. I felt like a small mouse cowering in the walls, knowing a great snake was gliding through the dark spaces of our village. The next day, news came that confirmed my deepest fears. A fisherman's wife, a young woman named Vanna who lived on the other side of the village, near the river, had lost her baby during the night. She had been 8 months pregnant. Healthy and strong, she had woken up in the middle of the night to cramping and bleeding, and by morning the baby was gone. A miscarriage, they said. a tragedy. But I knew better. I felt the cold certainty of it in my bones. It was the op. It had hunted again. Its hunger was not satisfied. The pattern was clear. It was targeting the most vulnerable, the unborn and the newly born. A cold rage started to mix with my fear. This thing, this monster wearing a human face, was preying on my friends, my neighbors. It was stealing the future of our village. I had to do something. I had to know who it was. My mind kept returning to Yasana, the midwife. She was a respected woman, a widow who had lived in the village for decades. She was kind, gentle, always ready with a soothing word or a herbal remedy. It seemed impossible. And yet, she was there at Chantria's house. She would have known Vanna was close to giving birth. She was in the perfect position to know who was vulnerable. She was trusted. No one would ever suspect her. I spent the day watching her. It was a terrifying, nerve-wracking ordeal. I pretended to be running errands, passing by her small house, lingering at the market stall near hers. She was exactly as she always was, calm, smiling, offering advice to young mothers. I saw nothing out of the ordinary. I began to doubt myself. Was I going crazy? Was I letting Yai's old stories poison my mind against an innocent woman? Then, in the late afternoon, I saw it. Yasana was talking to another woman, laughing at some shared joke. As the other woman turned to leave, Yasana's smile faded slightly. Her hand came up to her krama, the scarf around her neck, and with a quick, almost unconscious gesture, she drew the edge of it across her lips. A simple wipe, a gesture anyone might make. But it was the way she did it, the furtiveness, the way her eyes darted around for a split second, as if to check if anyone was watching. And in that moment, her eyes met mine. Just for a second, but it was long enough. I saw a flicker of something in their depths, not kindness, not warmth. It was something cold, ancient, and predatory, a recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual placid smile as she gave me a polite nod. I turned and walked away, my legs feeling weak. I didn't need any more proof. I knew who the monster was. The friendly village midwife, the woman who was meant to bring life into our community, was the very thing that was devouring it. I ran home, my heart pounding with a new, more urgent kind of fear. It wasn't just the fear of a nameless monster anymore. It was the fear of a monster I knew. A monster who had seen me, who knew that I had seen her. I burst into the house, finding Yai preparing the evening rice. "Yai, it's her, it's Yasana," I gasped, the words tumbling out of me. I told her what I saw, the look in her eyes. Yai listened, her face growing grim. She put down the rice paddle and took my hands in her own. Her hands were old and calloused, but they were steady. "Soria, you have put yourself in great danger," she said, her voice low and grave. "Now that she knows you suspect, she will not be idle. The op is a creature of vengeance and spite. She will see you as a threat." "What do we do?" I cried, tears of fear and frustration welling in my eyes. "We can't just let her keep doing this. Chantria's baby is still so weak. What if she goes back for him?" Yai was silent for a moment, her eyes closed as if in prayer. When she opened them, they were filled with a steely resolve I had not seen in her for many years. "We will not let her," she said. "There are old ways, ways to protect, ways to fight back. Tonight we will not hide, we will set a trap." She told me her plan. It was a folk remedy, a piece of ancient wisdom passed down through generations, a defense against the creatures of the night. The op, for all its unholy power, has a weakness. Its trailing entrails, the very source of its gruesome mobility, are vulnerable. They can be caught, snagged, torn. The creature is said to be terrified of anything thorny, anything that can rip and shred its exposed organs. "There is a thicket of thorny bamboo at the edge of the village," Yai said. "We will cut the branches. We will lay a barrier of thorns under Chantria's house, a fence she will not see in the dark. If she comes for the child again tonight, she will find a surprise waiting for her." As dusk began to settle, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, we slipped out of our house with a large knife. We moved like shadows, avoiding the main path, our feet silent on the soft earth. The thorny bamboo grew in a dense, tangled clump, a natural wall of spikes. It was difficult, painful work. The thorns, sharp as needles, tore at our hands and arms, but we worked quickly, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate hope. We gathered a huge armful of the spiny branches and made our way to Chantria's house. We were lucky. They were inside, the house quiet. We moved underneath into the dark, damp space. The air was cool and smelled of mud and chickens. Working by the dim, fatting light of the sky, we began to weave the thorny branches between the stilts, creating a low, almost invisible web of spikes around the area directly beneath where the baby would be sleeping. It was a gruesome task. I couldn't help but imagine what we were trying to catch. A floating head, dangling organs. The image made my hands tremble. We finished just as the last of the light died, plunging the village into darkness. We crept back to our own house, our arms and hands stinging with 100 tiny cuts. That night, the air was different. It was still dead calm, and the cicadas were silent from the very beginning. The world was holding its breath. Yai and I did not lie on our mats. We sat by the shuttered window, the one that looked out towards Chantria's house, and we waited. Hours passed. The village was a collection of dark, silent shapes against a starless sky. My fear was a living thing inside me, a cold creature coiling in my gut. Every shadow seemed to move. Every whisper of wind sounded like a wet, dragging footstep. I thought about Yasana in her house, lying on her bed. Was her head still on her shoulders? Or was it already free, already gliding through the darkness, hungry? Then we heard it. It was faint at first, coming from the direction of Yasana's house. A soft, wet, rhythmic sound. Drag, pause, it was getting closer. Yai grabbed my arm, her grip like iron. "She is coming," she whispered. I peered through a small crack in the window shutter. My heart felt like it was going to explode. And then I saw it. A faint, pulsing red light moving steadily through the darkness. It floated just above the ground, a lone, bloody star in the blackness. It was moving faster tonight with more purpose, more hunger. It made its way down the path, straight for Chantria's house. It was a terrifyingly hypnotic sight. The crimson glow seemed to throb in time with my own frantic pulse. It reached the house and, without hesitation, slipped underneath the stilts, heading directly for the spot where we had laid our trap. We waited, the silence stretched thin and tight. Then it happened. A sound tore through the night, a sound so horrific it defied description. It was not human and not animal. It was a high-pitched, guttural shriek of pure, unadulterated agony and rage. It was the sound of a creature from a nightmare, a shriek that clawed at the air and seemed to curdle the very blood in my veins. Dogs all over the village erupted in a frenzy of terrified barking and howling. Lights flickered on in a few of the houses. The shriek came again, louder this time, a gurgling, tearing sound. I looked through the crack again, my body trembling uncontrollably. The red light was thrashing wildly under the house, lashing back and forth like a cornered animal. It was caught. Our trap had worked. Its entrails were tangled in the thorny bamboo. In the frantic, pulsing glow, I could see it clearly for the first time. The head. It was a woman's head, its long black hair matted with mud and filth. And below it, a horrific, glistening mass of organs, veins, and intestines, glowing with that sickening red light. Some of them were snagged on the thorns, and dark, viscous fluid was dripping from them onto the ground. The head twisted, its face contorted into a mask of inhuman fury. The face of Yasana, the midwife. And then she looked up. Her eyes, glowing with a faint red light of their own, locked directly onto my window. Directly onto me. She saw me. She knew. The world seemed to stop. I was pinned by that gaze, paralyzed by a terror so absolute it felt like my soul was turning to ice. The hatred in those eyes was a physical force, a promise of a pain worse than death. With a final, deafening scream of rage, the creature gave a massive, violent wrench. There was a wet, tearing sound, like fabric being ripped apart. It tore itself free from the thorns, leaving behind shimmering ribbons of flesh and gore still hooked on the spikes. The light flickered violently, then shot out from under the house. It fled, moving at an impossible speed, a bleeding, wounded comet of horror, and vanished into the deep darkness of the rice paddies. The silence that fell afterward was worse than the screaming. It was a dead, hollow silence, filled with the echo of that unholy sound and the ghost of that hateful stare. The next morning, the village was buzzing. Everyone had heard the shriek. They blamed it on wild dogs fighting, or a bad omen, or a prank by restless teenagers. No one knew the truth. No one could have possibly guessed. Chantria's baby, miraculously, began to recover. From that day on, his fever broke and his strength returned. It was as if a shadow had been lifted from him. Chantria and her husband called it a blessing from the spirits. Yai and I knew we had just given them a temporary reprieve. I lived in a state of constant, gnawing fear. The op was wounded, but it was not dead, and it knew who I was. 2 days later, my courage finally outweighed my terror. I had to see her. I walked to Yasana's house, my feet feeling like lead. I needed to see her face in the daylight. I knocked on her door, my heart in my throat. She opened it. She looked awful. She was pale, sickly, and seemed to have aged 10 years. She moved stiffly, as if in great pain. Her krama was pulled up high on her neck, higher than usual. But as she turned to invite me in, the scarf shifted for just a moment. And I saw it. A series of deep, raw, vicious-looking scratches running along the side of her neck and disappearing down into her collar. Scratches that looked exactly like they had been made by sharp, desperate thorns. She saw me looking. She quickly adjusted the scarf, her movements sharp and deliberate. Then she looked at me and gave me a smile. It was a thin, tight, terrible smile that did not reach her cold, dead eyes. "Soria," she said, her voice a soft, hoarse rasp. "So good of you to visit. I haven't been feeling myself the last couple of nights." She paused, her eyes boring into mine. "Did you sleep well?" I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. I just stood there, staring at the woman who was a monster and the monster who was a woman. She knew. She knew that I knew. And her smile told me that this was not over. It was just the beginning. I left her house and walked back through the village in a daze. Nothing looked the same. The smiling faces of my neighbors now seemed like masks. The laughter of children felt fragile, temporary. The idyllic peace of my home had been shattered forever, replaced by a secret I could never share. Who would believe the fantastic, horrifying tale of a young woman and her grandmother against a creature from a dark legend? Accusing a respected midwife of being a soul-eating monster would get me labeled as insane, or worse. I am trapped. We are all trapped, living side by side with a hungry, patient evil. Now every night, I sit by the window and I listen. I listen to the sounds of the village, to the drone of the cicadas, and I pray that they do not fall silent. I look out at the houses, each one a small island of light in a vast, dark ocean, and I wonder whose door she will visit next. The nights here are no longer peaceful. The darkness is no longer empty. It is a waiting darkness, a hungry darkness. And I know that somewhere out there in that suffocating, humid night, a pulsing crimson light is healing. And it is waiting, and it remembers me. So if you are ever in a quiet place on a dark, humid night, and you hear the world suddenly fall silent, do not look through the cracks in the floor. Do not peer out the window. Some things once seen can never be unseen, and some hungers born of dark magic and ancient curses never ever die.